job. Yeah, yeah. Can't pretend even back then.
Well, X2thel is pleased, very pleased, in fact, to be here with Darien, and we have a number of questions we want to ask him. We're just going to talk about his artistry and see what makes the man tick. But my first question to you is about a song that you released, and it's something that I play a lot. Okay, it's on my iPod, it's on my wife's iPod. It's a song called Composure. So let me ask you, is Composure your biggest hit to date?
You know, it's funny the way these things work, especially as an indie artist. You know, in one territory, this is your biggest hit. In another territory, this is your biggest hit. I mean, Composure has definitely done really well for us. You know, we released a video for it, you know, for that reason, especially here in the U.S., it's done really well. You know, I would say in a show, there's like 3 or 4 that like really, I think, just capture the vibe of the record, and Composure is definitely one of them. It's in the top. It's in the top. Yeah.
So we looked at the video, and so my question to you is that, like, did you actually, like, you know, get with the engineer, or?
Oh, you know, to be a continued part. You know, well, you know, we're working on some other videos, so you know, we'll answer those questions.
It can be like part 3.
Right. It's a cliffhanger.
But it was one of those things where the video, it actually is a story, and it's something that, unlike just like a lot of stuff that you see these days, which is simply images or whatever for sensational purposes, this tracked the lyrics, okay, and it made a lot of sense, okay, and I could understand why, you know, met her on the job, okay, but okay.
Absolutely.
But yeah, absolutely. So that was cool. I kind of like to ask you about your artistry, and the first thing I want to ask you is about your influences, okay, and so during your formative years in music, who were you inspired by, and were there people that you wanted to emulate?
You know, when I came up, I mean, I was listening to probably originally a lot of what was on the radio, you know, top 40 kind of stuff. But when I really came into my own was when I started listening to artists like Michael Jackson and Stevie. You know, they kind of like touched my soul and just made me really get in tune with like just what they were doing melodically and lyrically. Even later on, that really became something that, you know, I got in touch with.
Okay, and are there people that you're listening to these days? Any current influences that you have?
You know, it's funny. The people that I listen to nowadays are my friends. You know, so it became one of those things.
Like
I'm fortunate to know artists like Eric Roberson and Cy Smith and you know Gerard Anthony, whose record I'm on, and Angela Johnson. You know, so it's kind of like the people that I listen to at this moment are really a lot of other independent artists, because I really feel like they're putting out some of the best music right now.
Well, I'm a huge Cy Smith fan.
Indeed.
Okay? As a matter of fact, I just saw her at Blue Note a couple weeks ago.
Mm-hmm. She throws down too. So.
Don't she though?
Indeed.
And Zoe. And
yes.
Zoe was dealing.
Absolutely.
Okay. Any other contemporary artists that you're checking out? People that you may not necessarily know, but their music you've heard?
You know, it's while I'm in the process of working on a record, if I'm being honest, I don't listen to a lot of other artists, because I know that you can pull, you know, from other things. So a lot of it is reflecting on things that I'm writing and things of that nature. So I don't really reach out to too many things. I'll go on like the blog sites and kind of like get a taste of everybody's stuff, but none of them are really in full rotation. You know, I definitely did dig Frank Ocean's new record from a lyrical standpoint. I felt like he was bringing something to the game, and I'm really into the art of songwriting. So, you know, when somebody comes along like that and I'm like, oh, you know, there's a little more depth here than, you know, one listen, you're not going to get it. I really get into that kind of
Unless
stuff.
it's Novocaine, which you get right away.
Well, yeah. There's
okay.
definitely that. Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, that's, you know, I find that interesting, because a lot of artists closely check out, you know, other people in the field, okay, and they think, well, gee, okay, this person got a hit doing this, you know, so you're trying to stay away from, you know.
I can't do that. Like, in all honesty, you know, once again, going back to the songwriting thing, the songs and the stories are my own to tell. So really, listening to somebody else's stories doesn't really give me any real influence or any inspiration more than I just like the song. You know, it's a process that's really unique to me as a person. It's my fingerprint is on these records. So I'll listen, you know, I'm not somebody who gauges what's popular and like, oh, I'm going to put that on the record at all. It's, you know, it's just a thing of, if I feel something that moves me and gets me to like really pen something to it, then that to me is my hit, you know, for me at least, you know, and it's worked out well, because I mean, the people have responded to the songs that I've had those feelings for.
Well, if you, as a songwriter, write about the stuff that, like, you know, is personal to your life, then that kind of means that you must have an interesting life, okay? Because if your life is boring, and you're writing songs that are like, oh, okay, nobody's, you know, gonna listen to it.
True, but you know, everybody's life is interesting. Even people that seemingly do nothing. If you tap into what they're thinking, because most of the time those people are thinking, I wish I could do this, that, and the other thing, and that is part of their life. They're just not living it. They're not going out for it. So a lot of my songs are written from personal experience, but some are written from conversations that I have with people. You know, that happens often. You know, I'll be having a conversation with someone. I'll be like, wow, that's a unique perspective. You know, that would make a good song.
You know, as you're saying this, it brings to mind, and I'm not going to name the songwriter, but she's very successful, very popular, and I read an article about her in one of the production magazines. And basically it says it's like 7 days a week she goes to work. She has a little DX7, okay, and that's all she got.
Okay.
Okay. And she goes in, and that's what she does, okay, and then she will have, it'll go to a cassette, and then the person she collaborates with turns it. So I'm thinking, well, gee, how interesting could this be? She must have like a heck of an imagination, because she's not coming out of this room doing anything. Yet and still, she sells a whole bunch of records. Okay, so it's really kind of completely the opposite of your experience. It sounds like. Let me ask you a little bit more about the production process. Now, you're obviously a singer-songwriter. Okay. Do you work with a number of producers, or are you basically producing your own tracks, or how, you know, what do you do? Well,
producers is a funny word, and we're probably not going to get too deep into that, but I do work with a lot of different artists, and a lot of different people do submit tracks to me. As far as production and taking that overall role, like a Quincy Jones or somebody that would oversee a project, I pretty much take that role because I found that, you know, nobody's going to love it and massage it the way I will. You know, but I do take submissions from a lot of different, I work with a lot of different producers, you know, to try and get what it is. But there's always, I get something and I need to do some additions or to carve out a little bit in it just to personalize it once I get it. So, you know. So
it's more than just like changing keys so that it fits your voice?
No, yeah, it's a lot more than that. Like it might, like I'm working on a project right now that needs a string arrangement. So, you know, and the individual that I'm working with, I don't know that he'd be the guy for the strings, so I know that there's someone else that will do the strings, and I'm going to bring it to them. And that's how the last project came about like that too. There was a lot of things that I had someone come in later and like do a live guitar, or, you know, we wanted to replace something or stuff like that, you know, just to give it as much of an organic feel as we could with the budgetary limitations we have, you know.
Well, you know, and that's interesting because a lot of music that's being produced right now, it's like you got a single person who's sitting at a digital audio workstation, and, you know, whatever their sound library is or whatever they got, and that's what they're doing, okay? And you can really, at least I can, tell the difference when I'm hearing live musicians, okay? But not everybody has the budget to really do that, you know, and so I think folks maybe do what they can do. But do you think that the trend right now is a return to live instrumentation?
I wish it was. I think it's actually still on the road of just one individual just sitting there, you know, and it gets more so even with, like, now you got an iPad. A lot of people are doing records on a whole record on an iPad. I think the music suffers like that because, you know, nobody's a specialist in every single instrument and arrangement, you know, and there's just a quality to a bunch of minds meeting that you don't get when it's just one person sitting around. That's not to say that somebody can't produce a hit. I've gotten tracks submitted to me by individuals and I'm like, wow, this is incredible. But I still usually end up adding something, or I even add myself to it, you know, so there's still a collaboration going on in there. So I think a lot of the artists on the independent scene are trying to keep those traditions alive with live instrumentation, and they get a vibe for it because they're still performing live. So they've got that feel, and they want to kind of capture it on a record. But I would say overall, people are working within their budgets, and the cheapest thing to do is get somebody to just sit over a DAW, and, you know, I mean, I would love to track the tape. That's not going to happen right now, you know.
Well, no, you don't want to track the tape because tape is like hard to come by these days.
Well, that's another thing. I was talking to my manager Miles about it, and I was like, you know, kids today, if you tell them tape, they're gonna think Scotch tape. They're not gonna know what else you're talking about. So,
and
you know,
with some of the tape emulators that are out there, the plugins,
right.
Okay, you can't really tell. You're getting the same sound saturation that you would get, you know, with tape. Okay. Right. You mentioned, you know, that people submit stuff to you. Where do you find these people that, you know, provide you with material?
You know, while I am briefly like checking out what's going on in the net, sometimes I'll hear somebody's track and I'll be like, wow, who produced this? And I'll reach out. I mean, the last record, I hadn't met all the producers. When the record was finished, I probably hadn't met three or four of the individuals at that time, you know, but we had done the record together, you know, flying files back and forth. This record has been similar, but I've actually had an opportunity to meet some of the producers. Like, for instance, I went on the Capitol Jazz Cruise, and one of the songs is produced by Dre, and he basically was the MD on the boat, so we kind of got to chop it up a little bit, and then I got to hear some stuff he was doing, and you know, we were able to pull that together. So sometimes it works like that, but a lot of the times it's literally just hearing something, or somebody might reach out on Facebook, or Miles might send me something, say, hey, this person is interested in working with you, and I just, you know, take them as they come.
Right now, the trend, and I guess I shouldn't say right now because it's been happening for a while now. The trend is toward independent artists, and the so-called majors aren't really as big a force as they used to be. It seems to me that what the majors are doing, to the extent that they're doing anything at all, is maybe giving one artist an opportunity for a year, and you know, you've got a budget, and then you know, if something happens, cool, and if not, then that's the end. But they're not trying to develop a whole bunch of other people. But it's actually, you know, given an opportunity, a greater, in my view, a greater opportunity to independent artists. And so I'd like to ask you, what do you view as the biggest challenges to an independent artist these days?
You got enough tape in that thing?
Yeah, we'll go to the tape end.
Okay. No, there's a lot. I mean, obviously, at the top of the list would probably be budget. I mean, there's definitely certain things, you know, you have to adjust your dream sometimes, you know, and you have to bring it in a little bit. That was one of the first things in doing the last record. Was we had high hopes for a lot of video stuff, and you know, I would come to people with my treatment, and they're like, you know, it's like $150,000 you're looking at here, you know, or whatever it was, and I had to reel it in, you know. And it's the same thing with the records. I mean, you know, I would love to have larger arrangements and do a lot of things live, and those things we're not able to do all the time, you know. So, and then it's also kind of like just commanding a little bit more respect. Like, I mean, if you know, on the indie scene, you know, we've been able to make a little bit of a headway, and we've definitely carved out a name in some ways for what we're doing. But at the same time, it's still difficult to get people on board with your dream, because everybody's dreaming, right? So it's like you have to really, it's easier as a major label artist, you know, insert name here. If I step to you and say, hey, I want you to play on my record, you know, people are like, oh, this is going to do something because it's so-and-so, and they're in the machine. So to convince people that, okay, I'm not in the machine, but we're going to put together a really beautiful record, and we're going to work it hard, like we're going to be on it. Sometimes it's not the easiest thing to do. So, you know, I find that it makes the process a little slower than I would like, you know. I mean, because I mean, my written catalog is so far, it's much larger than, you know, my produced catalog at this point. You know, so again, I think it all goes kind of back to the budget, and also, if I'm being honest, I mean, I've been really the last year or so trying to figure out just people, like, what are people doing? Like, the trends are changing. You know, you've got all these things. You've got streaming services, and you've got people who don't really want physical CDs anymore. They just want it on their iPod or on their phone. People are listening to music differently. So these are things that, you know, when you're putting together a new project, you really have to take into consideration. You know, I don't want to print up 7,000 CDs and then find that nobody's buying. Right. You know, and again, you know, even bigger than that, you have to like look. This is the U.S. versus this is the U.K. It's a lot to try and put into your calculator while you're trying to just make music. You know.
And also, I mean, these days we're looking at a generation of people who think that music should be free, and you know,
you definitely don't have enough tape for this conversation.
Okay, and so my question would be, if you are an artist and you're working hard at your craft, you're turning out product, mm-hmm. Okay, and then you find that some site in Russia or even maybe closer than that has your whole catalog for free, downloadable.
Right.
What is your incentive to keep producing music when there may not necessarily be a financial return for the song itself?
That's the problem right now. And honestly, one of the larger problems, in my view, is that it's one thing for people to bootleg your record. I mean, it's to be expected. I know when we first put the record out, you know, we had signed up for the Google alerts. So we get all these Google alerts getting excited. Oh, but all of the Google alerts were like these torrents, you know. So it was like, you know, and at first we tried to chase them down, and we were sending people, we didn't know their language, using Google Translate, trying to send them a message, take it down, you know. I don't know what we sent them, but that's what we sent. And then after a while, you're like, okay, you know what? I'm not going to be able to get at these cats. Some of these places we don't even have any distribution, so maybe it's better that in those locations the music is there somewhat.
Because at least it's getting your name out and it's getting your sound out.
Somewhat, but I think the rationale gets messed up when you have a lot of artists who are giving away their entire projects for free. And I try to tell people, I'm like, look, you're looking at major artists giving away a mixtape, or what they call a mixtape at this point. It's a different situation. I mean, like, you know, Miguel just put out a mixtape and Adorn was on it, and that is in rotation on radio. So don't expect the same things to happen, you know. And the other flip side of it is that hip hop and soul are a little different. Like, I know a lot of MCs that will put together a project, and it's like, you know, it might cost them, I don't know, a couple $100. They're putting breakbeats down or whatever. Not to take away from it, but it's not a whole big process. So you can literally call it a mixtape, and they'll just drop it for free and get their name out. But a lot of the people that I know that are putting out what they're calling mixtapes, they're albums, and they cost them $10,000, $15,000 to produce. And when you start to give those things away and have everybody accustomed to getting the music for free, it's going to be hard to get them back in and tell them, well, now you got to pay, because why? Last project was free. You know? And
then it devalues you as an artist. Absolutely. Because if everybody can hear your music for free, why should they pay?
Right. So this is the battle, though, and this is part of the thing we put in the calculator, because certain things you can't take back. I mean, you know, Spotify and all these things that are going on, they're just realities right now. So, you know, when people contact me, I ask them what are they buying, you know, habits. Like, if you heard something on, you know, Rhapsody or Spotify, did you buy it? What about Pandora? Does it make you want to buy a record, or do you just, you know? So this is the challenge. It was one of the big challenges for independent record like artists right now.
And something else I think that goes along with that is there used to this thing called radio. Okay.
Really?
Yeah, you know, once upon a time. Okay, and they used to actually play like music.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And so, what role, if any, do you see, you know, radio playing these days?
Again, it definitely deals with location. I think in the U.S. right now, radio doesn't play much of a role for independent artists. You know, somehow you might be able to get through in one way or another. You know, you know, once like you didn't name names, I'm not going to name names. We had a couple of situations where we thought, and then it was like, oh, that's the game. You know, so people are still playing that game. I think in other territories, you do have some options. I think overseas, they still value music on some levels, especially the live genre of music or soul music. So they'll play it. Radio is in as much trouble as the rest of the country right now. You know what I mean? We're just like, it's in a space where it's just been purchased, you know, and unless you are involved in that, you're kind of not going to have too much leverage. And it costs a lot of money as an independent artist to get records spun. So,
well, I think really, when you look at the corporatization of it, okay, you got like, you know, not people that are music people, but you have like accountants and actuaries sitting in a room. How are we going to generate the most profit, okay? And we can sell more ads in this amount of time if we don't play any music, okay?
I mean, if it was ads, it'd be one thing, but you know, the money is coming from the labels. Let's keep it real. Like, they do worry about the ads, but they're going to get paid one way or another. If they take a chance with a bunch of independent artists, let's say they put together an hour-long show with independent artists and they want to see if people respond to it. I mean, that show, the only revenues that's going to come in is from the ads. Whereas if they put on insert artists here, they don't. If the ads do well or not, it doesn't matter because they're going to get money from the label, the kickbacks and payolas and whatnot. You know, so it's that kind of thing. Miles did like this with his eyes, so he's heard me say payola. So you know, I said it again. I said it twice.
Payola is real. Okay, it's really real. Okay,
absolutely.
But I think because one of the things that I see happening right now is there are so many really fantastic independent artists who are creating music that's on the same level as some of the classic people that you named at the outset of the interview. Okay, you know, the artistry is there. Okay, but folks don't get an opportunity to be exposed to it, and so what happens is you can go on satellite radio, and you would think that there's nobody around but Chris Brown. You would think there's nobody around but, like, you know, 2 or 3 people who are just like, you know, over and over and over. Well, changing the subject slightly, okay? Let's talk about some of your product, okay? And so, like I said, Composure is like, you know, it's like in heavy rotation on my iPod. But let's talk about, no, for real, okay? So let's talk about what you're doing right now, what your plans are product-wise.
Yeah, I mean, I'm working on my new record, Notes from the Journey. You know, I'm definitely full in on that. Again, just trying to pull some of the pieces together. This record is a different type of record than the first record. The first record, I was really concerned, If These Walls Could Talk, my first record, I was really concerned with telling my story. I wanted to introduce people to who I was as an artist, who I was as a singer. Again, at that time, I really didn't even know the soul scene, as it were. You know, I was really a new jack. You know, we were just starting, and we just decided we would put out this record. This record, I want to tell more of our story, you know, like everyone's story. You know, a lot of things have happened since putting out that record, a lot of great things, a lot of things that took me emotionally on a journey, you know, losses and wins. So this record is definitely more so about a little bit of reflection and just trying to tackle some of the issues that everyone has. Like, I think everybody has a lot of questions, you know, just about everything. You know, just constantly wondering, like, well, am I doing the right thing? Where am I at this point in my life? And that's kind of what this record is for me, like trying to like pose some of these questions that I know other people pose all the time, you know, and I know from the same thing, having conversations, and also to talk about some of those wins and losses since the last record. You know.
Well, now, how long are you going to keep your fans waiting for the new music? Are you going to put out like maybe an EP or something, or are you just going to wait and put the whole?
I don't want to do an EP.
I'm
I'm probably old school with the whole EP thing, you know, because it's a body of work, so I don't want to break it up. I've already shortened it because I know people's attention span is but so much, so you know we've already kind of like dealt with that. That was one reality we had to come to grips with, which is like, okay, people are communicating 140 characters, so this is all they got time for. They don't want 15 songs maybe or 20 song album type
Well,
thing.
then I have an observation, not to cut you off, but I have an observation on that, because if you listen to like the classic so-called albums that were vinyl, you could only fit so many tracks
this is true.
on there.
This is true.
And then you have to get up and flip it over and listen to the rest. So then when the CD came out, now you're dealing with...
back.
Oh, well, I can take it there. I can take it there.
Right.
And then when the CD came out, now you have like, 80-something minutes to fill up. And so I think a lot of artists at that time, and CDs are 20 years old now, but I think at that time artists were thinking, well, I got all this stuff, and if I don't fill it up, then people are going to feel like they're shortchanged. Okay, so I'm just going to put as many tracks as the CD will hold. Okay, and I don't know that necessarily results in a high quality product.
Definitely not. I mean, if you are not really honest with yourself about what's filler, to be honest with you, and what's not. I mean, to me, again, going back to storytelling, the album has to tell a certain story, and there are certain songs for me that on this particular record, if they're not on there, then the story has holes in it. But again, if I have two songs that are telling the same story, then one of them maybe don't need to be here. Or if they're telling derivatives of that story, maybe we can shorten the record. And that's kind of what was going on with this. There were a couple of songs where I felt like I was in a zone, and I probably wrote 10 songs about this particular topic, and I fell in love with all of them. But, for the purposes of the overall story, really, let's just go with the one that really, encapsulates everything, put it on there.
Well, see, what you're talking about is what we used to euphemistically call a concept record. Okay?
Yes.
Where it's like from here's the beginning, and here's the whole story, and here's the...
Right. Well, I believe in that. I mean, to me, that's the only reason... for the format of an album, really. Otherwise, it's just a collection of songs. I mean, if you don't have some continuity with the record, and it not just being the artist's voice, but maybe their writing style or their production style, we did that with the first record without even realizing it. A lot of people came to us and said, you guys, the record really sounds like put together. And it wasn't something, I didn't have any skills with this. We didn't have skills with this. We just did what we felt fit. But it also made sense from the standpoint of, I was the writer for those records, and that was my story at the time, so I think nowadays you have a lot of artists that maybe don't write their own songs, so they're just getting, all right, let's try and get as many hits on this record as we can, and then it becomes a collection of songs, and in that way that serves the purpose of the iTunes and things where you're just buying a single because they're not connected anyway, so what difference does it make,
I guess I have one final question for you in the time that we have remaining. And that's this. Where do you think music is going? And what are your future musical plans as an artist? And how does that fit into what you think is going to be happening with music down the line?
This one's tough. I mean, I have an optimistic and a pessimistic side when it comes to music.
Let's hear the pessimistic.
Okay.
And then we can end on the optimistic.
Yeah. The pessimistic side is, unfortunately, some of the things we talked about earlier are realities. I mean, in having these conversations with some of the youth and even some of the older cats that I know, people are just starting to see less and less of a value in music, you know, in purchasing it, even the activities that they have that they use the music for. I mean, a lot of people, it's a secondary medium. It's like, you know, I'm checking my Facebook and I'm listening to something, or you know, I'm cleaning my house. You know, it's not like a sit down like what you were talking about. I'm gonna read the liner notes, and all those things have kind of gone away. Even something as simple as going to the record shop and throwing on some headphones and let me listen to this record before I buy it. I mean, people just go to your iTunes and pop the little preview, and you know, so that has kind of like put us as artists and consumers even in a funny place with music, because it really has become something that a lot of people just don't feel like they need. You know, and once you start taking that out, you know, you kind of put yourself in a funny position, because it's going to be the first thing to get dropped all the time. It's like, well, I need a pair of socks. I don't really have to pay for a record, so I just get it anyway, you know.
But not to cut you off, but a little observation, okay? I play music, and I perform in the jazz genre kind of often. And we did a thing on this past Friday. And I spoke to the drummer when I was on my way here, and he was telling me, oh, we got a lot of calls, and people were like real happy with what we did. And people aren't used to hearing live music anymore. And I'm like, wow, okay, yeah, that's true. Because when I was younger, okay, there were clubs in my neighborhood. Okay, I've been black a long time. And you had clubs right there in the neighborhood where you could go every Friday, every Saturday, every Sunday, okay, and hear bands, okay? And I think that we're now several generations into that not being, you know, actually even an experience for some people.
Right.
And was in the recording studio. I saw a young person who was coming out, who I guess just got finished making their record, and they was looking at our guitar player. They'd never seen someone actually playing a musical instrument. I'm like, wow, you're in the recording studio making a record. You couldn't find middle C on the piano keyboard at gunpoint.
Right.
Okay?
Well, that happened at the BET, I think it was the BET Awards, whatever, when they saw D'Angelo play, and you could see the looks on people, in the, like, they, you know, he's going in.
He can actually
and
play.
he's got a band, and he's doing the theatrics, he's going James Brown style, and people were like, almost looked scared. I mean, they were like, what are those things next to him, you know, because they're not used to it. I mean, they're used to dancers and all these other little things, but definitely the live thing is shocking for some folk, you know, absolutely.
Well, we were talking, you said that there's some, you know, pessimistic things that you could discuss about where music is going. Let's end on the optimistic note.
Optimistic. Well, the optimistic, music is something that everybody generally has a love for, and there's definitely a place for it. You know, I mean, it's like when you go back to like television, and you know, first they put the little speaker on there, and it was like it gave sound like they devalued it at the time, the same way they're kind of doing it now. But eventually, people were like, you know, I don't really get immersed in this until I get the full sound, like, and then it became like Dolby and theatrical and everything. You know, you got these big, and I think it will eventually come back to that. I think that's what we're waiting for. You know, we're not waiting for, because we're going to work on put out music as we do. But the thing that you spoke about with the live as well, I think it will return to that. Everything is cyclical, so eventually people are going to get tired, and I think a lot of them are tired already, because it's just too repetitive. You know, and after a while, people are like, I'm gonna need a change. And when they do need a change, there will be a whole network of folk that have been working on their craft and honing their craft that will be ready for them when they're ready to change. You know, I'm just hopeful that the mechanism, you know, when we talk about the corporate side and everything, I'm just hoping that even if somebody does it to be greedy, you know what I mean? Just do it to be greedy. I don't care how you do it, but see the value in this music again, and put it out there for the public to decide, you know, because I think that's what the thing, when you take people's choices away, you don't really get a real gauge on what they like. If you say, do you like Pepsi or Coke, nobody gets to say Sprite. You know, it's just, these are the two options. You got one of the two. So I really hope, and I'm hopeful, that somebody will have the vision to take this genre and kind of like put it in front of the people again. Because I know as soon as they do, there's a massive amount of people that will come out for it, you know.
My take on it is this. Yeah, there are a lot of people that only know fast food. So they're hungry, they're going for fast food.
Right.
But you introduce them to fine dining, okay, gourmet dining, okay, and they can never go back, okay?
Right.
And so I think that high quality music is just like that, okay, once you're exposed to it. So I think the issue is, how do you get this music to the audience that it deserves?
Right. Absolutely. Right.
Thank you very much for
Thank you,
spending
brother.
some time with
I
us.
appreciate it.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
it's our pleasure entirely.
Indeed.
Good, and we look forward to your next musical offering.
Yes, indeed. Well, it's from the journey. Hopefully soon.
Da 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 da. It begins. We met as